Welcome back, everybody, to another Dank Talks. It has been a while, but today I'm going to be talking about something that has been more and more on my mind as of late. There may be some hot takes in this, but I am trying to be as objective and scientific in my approach to the topic at hand as I possibly can. I do acknowledge there is some self-reflection and my own opinions and thoughts on the matter, but ultimately, my goal is to educate people on the pros and cons of animal breeding, or selective breeding, and inform everyone of some of the consequences that are in our modern society. I encourage all of my viewers to do their own research on this topic so they can make their own informed decisions on the purchasing of animal breeds and animal food products. This is in no way a piece to rag on people that eat meat or enjoy specific animal breeds, but this piece is oriented in such a way as to educate on the consequences of our so that you may make better and more mindful decisions on animals. So, we're going to open this segment with pros and cons to animal breeding. So, we'll start with the pros first. It is free in the aspect of business to start up. The startup of an animal breeding business is minimum, and after an initial purchase of the animals that you wish to breed, the cost of breeding is limited to food and shelter, which is quite desirable to a lot of people. Animal breeds are incredibly hard to patent, so just about anyone can breed the animal of their choice, be it dog, cat, horse, mouse, or even fish. This method can be used to encourage desirable and more valuable characteristics in animals that a would-be buyer might prefer over less desirable traits, which will drive the market price of certain animals up, although this pro is generally limited to the seller. If somebody has an animal with a trait that you want, you're probably going to be willing to pay more money for that animal. There are very few instances of selective breeding through animals harming humans in the immediate. So, by you breeding animals, there's not really going to be any detriment to you, right? Not immediately, at least. It's safe to breed animals, I guess, in a way. One big but rare advantage of selective breeding and animal breeding in general is a species developing traits and genes that prevent certain diseases from affecting the animals. So again, this is a rare one, and we will contrast this when we move on to our cons. With proper documentation, it ensures a quality animal that can be used again for breeding, racing, protection, or whatever it is that you desire these traits in an animal for, right? Selective breeding provides a sustainable food chain in terms of livestock. Animals can be bred to have shorter reproductive cycles and can in turn support an ever-growing population. It is projected by the year 2050 that our population density will have risen to 10 billion. And that is a lot of people. We need a steady food source, and through our selective breeding practices, we may be able to sustain that. So those are some of the pros. Now I would like to get into some of the cons of animal breeding. The first thing I'd like to kick it off with is it leads to a loss of variety. Selective breeding usually involves inbreeding of animals, which results in a decrease in genetic diversity. This can result in animals becoming weaker to certain pathogens and diseases, which can prove a risk to an entire population of animals. So this is kind of the contrast earlier that I was talking about. What happens if there is an animal breed that becomes suddenly disposed to a certain pathogen? For example, what happens if there's a disease that only affects chihuahuas, and now all the chihuahuas are at risk for it, and then they die? You may say something along the lines of, well, that's just the natural order of things. But there is a human element to us selectively breeding animals. Selective breeding risks creating new diseases. Animals that are subject to selective breeding are in danger of environmental changes and developing new diseases. So, For instance, if you have an animal that is supposed to be living in a warm, temperate climate that suddenly is taken to a place where it's cold and it's frigid, they're not going to have a very good time, and their quality of life is going to drop dramatically. And, our selective breeding practices expose a lot of animal breeds to this kind of environmental change, and this can develop new diseases in the animals that we're breeding. There is no control over genetic mutations. Selective breeding can hasten the good traits of evolution, but it has no defense against unfavorable traits. One consequence is the abundance of random genetic mutations, which can have a wide variety of negative effects, including, but not limited to, shorter lifespans, disabilities, and the deformation of the body, right? So you might be able to predict to a certain degree that if two dogs with brown hair breed, that you're going to get a dog with brown hair. But there is no guarantee that that's going to happen, because we don't have any methods to properly predict what kind of traits the offspring will have, other than what we can visually see. And our methods now are not entirely accurate or good. Another con is that it causes the original traits of animals to be lost, and over time, the animal breed can become an entirely new species. The natural permanent traits of the original parents may be lost over time. For instance, consider dogs versus wolves, where are from common ancestors, but dogs are a very different species than wolves. They don't quite have that same instinct that wolves do, and dogs are almost entirely reliant on us, where a wolf is still able to take care of itself, and those are traits that have been lost over time. Selective breeding can cause discomfort in animals. Humans may accidentally reproduce characteristics in animals that damage their health and overall quality of life, right? Selective breeding can result in a genetic depression, which is characterized by an increase of negative mutations and a high risk for inbreeding, which can last for generations. Right? So those are kind of the pros and the cons to animal breeding, right? Now I'm going to transition into a segment where I'm going to talk about my own thoughts on this. And in this segment, understand that this is more opinion-based now, and, you are free to agree or disagree as you please. I'm not here to try and change your mind. But my thoughts are, although our ability to control and selectively breed animals has had many benefits to us in terms of desirable traits, such as more efficient livestock, more playful puppies, and cuddlier kittens, there are a lot of moral red flags in animal breeding. Most breeders don't realize the negative consequences they could be dooming future generations to. There is such a small amount of mindfulness in many of the practices of the animal breeding industry. A lot of the people doing this are only looking to make a quick buck and value economic gain over the lives and health of a given population of animals. In a lot of ways, it can be quite sickening, especially since the lack of genetic diversity causes inbreeding and may contribute to new, more deadly diseases and genetic mutations. Our society has benefited greatly from the deaths and forced reproduction of many animals. Our approach is haphazard and not very mindful of the consequences we could be forcing onto these animals. While I don't think that this video pointing out the pros and cons of selective breeding will do much to prevent further animal breeders from ignorance and taking advantage of animals, I would like to see a more mindful approach to the quality of life that animals receive in regards to the breeding they are forced to undergo. We need to prioritize traits that we not only deem as helpful or desirable, but also the traits that make life easier and better for a given animal population. I urge everyone watching this to think twice before purchasing an animal from a breeder. Inbreeding is inhumane, and you may just be purchasing an animal doomed to an uncomfortable and unsatisfactory life. Our mindfulness and voice against the injustices the animals face is the only line of defense between us and themselves. Now, I'm not here to criticize what has already happened and been done. I am here to say that we do know better and can make better decisions in regards to how we treat our furry friends. With a more conscientious approach to animal breeding, we can keep animals alive longer, healthier, and happier. This world is not just ours, but theirs as well. It is our duty as the most dominant creatures on Earth to make choices that are morally correct in terms of our animals. So that's going to wrap up the segment on my own thoughts. Now I'm going to transition into some things that you may want to research on your own time if you would like to know some of the consequences of our selective breeding. Chickens have genetically mutated to the point of not being able to move their own body weight. Their breasts and wings have become too large for them to support, and they are no longer able to move in a lot of livestock scenarios. Many dog and cat species have shorter life expectancy and higher chances of birth defects, genetic mutations, and diseases. Take, for instance, boxers and the skin diseases that they develop, and pugs and their difficulty with breathing. Dairy cow fertility breeding has resulted in lameness and a decline in claw health, which directly corresponds to pain and stress in the animal. Many species of pig are currently in an inbreeding depression. As well, pigs have increased metabolic diseases such as porcine stress syndrome and mulberry heart disease as a result of genetic selection from faster-growing, lean animals with larger muscle packs. The meat quality of sheep and cows has reduced significantly because of growth trait breeders' desire. In conclusion, the effects of animal breeding are not really so obvious, and although there are quite a few pros to selective breeding, the cons are having a disastrous effect on our animals. The consequence of this in relation to our own health and happiness is not entirely unknown, but so far, the results indicate that we may be experiencing symptoms of this in our daily lives, down to the food we eat and the pets we own. Please have a more mindful and conscientious approach to animal breeding. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. The research for this was a lot of fun, and I am truly happy to be back making my Dank talks. I hope you enjoyed the topic and have a better idea of how animals are affected through our breeding practices, and the potential consequences that we may face as a result. The name of the game playing in the background of this video is called Terraria. I hope you all found the footage of my building enjoyable. Thank you again to everyone who has stuck it out to the end of this video, and if you're feeling generous, please leave a like. I encourage everyone to leave comments voicing your own opinions on the matter as well. If you liked this, please consider giving me a sub, as I will be working to bring more compelling content to my viewers. Have a great day or night, whenever or wherever you are viewing this video. Goodbye.